G'day, this is Kareem again here at Does It Matter, and we're doing an instructional today, and we're working on punching technique and punching power. Okay, I subscribe to the same school of training for punching as I do with my kicks, which is that there's a certain degree of tension and a certain degree of relaxation that's necessary to get the most amount out of the punch, and it's not simply how hard you can punch at any one time, but how hard you can punch over a long period of time, over minutes, okay, rather than seconds. How many times you can punch in a given minute. Pointless in being able to deliver, half a dozen to a dozen hard punches and then be gassed and punching like a fairy after the ensuing minutes of a fight. You need to be able to punch hard through the whole process. And so you're better off punching at a 75% intensity rate than 100% intensity rate for under a minute, or 75% intensity rate for 6 to 12 minutes. That's a much better option, okay? More likely to do the damage that you require in a self-defense situation or in a competitive situation. So, first of all, the power doesn't come from your arms. It just doesn't, okay? There's a certain amount of power generated through the shoulders and the torso, but realistically speaking, the power doesn't come from your arms. It comes from gluteus and the legs, okay? Legs generation and torso rotation. Rotation through the feet, rotation through the torso. That's what generates the power, okay? Much like a diff in the car, okay? Counter spinning and spinning to drive the tail shaft, which then drives the engine, okay? So you need to be able to coordinate all of that, and it's actually a coordination exercise that generates most of the power. It's power plus coordination. So let's start with that. First of all, decent wide base. I use more of an MMA type stance than a pure boxing or Muay Thai stance, because we tend to do more MMA than anything else. Shoulder wide or wider, about the same in depth. Kangaroo knees, nice and bendy. Shoulders up high, okay? Gorilla shoulders, kangaroo knees, okay? Hands high, eyes forward, leaning forward slightly in a posture, but not too hunched over, just slight tucking of the chin. So from here, I'm going to start with the jab, okay? The jab comes out, rotates, and as you can see, I come up on the toe, the knee turns in slightly, not too much. You don't want to collapse the knee in, that's not right. Turn, the knee's still pointing something mostly forward. I turn the foot in very slightly and enables the hip to come around and for the foreknuckles to strike. Other hand firmly glued to the chin, elbow in as tight as possible. Okay, then retract, back into guard. Rotation out, turning the knee slightly in, bang, come back. Okay, one more time, bang, come back. Again, it's the rotation of the hip, rotation of the knee very slightly, and rotation of the shoulder all together. So I'm not going, I'm not going 1, 2, 3. I'm not going 1, 2, 3, okay? Pointless, okay? It's all together, okay? Jack Dempsey in his book called it the falling step, and you can do it even without the step, okay? It's a falling technique. Boom, drop the hip very slightly, bend the knees, I drop in, I compensate by raising the hands trajectory very slightly. So it's coming up as I'm dropping and back. Bang, back. Slightly leaning forward, bang, back. Bang, back. Okay? It should look somewhat like that. Okay? They're just firm punches, they're not full power, they're just nice solid punches. You don't want to throw full power too often, you'll gas yourself, you'll overextend. So it's good discipline to throw sort of 70 to 80% punches most of the time at the most, and throw more of them. Now with the cross it's a little simple. My apologies there, the phone fell off the stand and it's still somewhat crooked. Let me adjust. Perfect. Okay. So the cross is a little simpler in that it's a bigger movement. Small, subtle movements are hard, okay? You don't get enough range to be able to actually pick up on the dynamics of the movement. Big movements are actually easier, surprisingly enough. Okay, so from here, this is my cross, my rear hand. Okay, same thing. I rotate through the hip, pivot on the supporting back foot, toes, okay, and strike. Okay, if I stand away a little bit further, you'll be able to see from this angle, pivot, turn, come back. Okay, this is the right cross. Pivot, turn, come back. Pivot, turn, come back. Okay, it's all hip, drive through the hips, okay, and punch. Punch. Punches inherently are rotational power. They push up from the hips, so there's a hip explosion through the legs, up into the hips, and then it's rotational power coming through, okay? So if you think of yourself as a push-turn machine, I push and turn, I push and turn. More subtle than that one. Push and turn, push and turn, push and turn, push and turn. The explosion comes from the start, contraction at the end and the beginning. So when I first throw the punch, when I finish the punch, isometric contraction. In between I try to relax. This is what makes punch sequence hard, because you go punch hard, relax, relax, punch hard, okay? Punch, contraction, relax, contraction as you hit, okay? Not an easy sequence to learn. Most people punch like a piston. Stiff, stiff. Yes, it's hard, but it's inefficient. You're gonna run out of gas really quickly, and it's prone to leading you to overcommit and overbalance yourself. Knees must remain bent, balance and stance must remain even over your hips. Once you start overcommitting to the punches, you start to lean forward over those hips and you're going too far forward, and now you become vulnerable to a whole range of counters, including grappling counters. You want to try to stay, so even when you're hitting hard, you're constantly over your hip. Always in balance, always in balance. That's all for punching today. We'll do some more instructionals later on some of the more fine and nuanced aspects, including head movement. Thanks very much, and that's all for today.